Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to go through peptides. So first off, we're going to start with Mounjaro, which doesn't actually burn a single gram of fat. Now, not one. And once you understand exactly what it's doing inside of you, you'll understand exactly why some people lose the weight, and then they just watch it crawl straight back on. That's what we're seeing in a large percentage of the population. So yeah, that's what we're going to run through. Now, I am going to take you through what these drugs actually do properly all the way through. And that's pretty much what happens to your body when you take these drugs, right? I'm not here to fearmonger, I'm not here to sell you anything, and just so you know where I stand, the only supplements I actually do take are whey and potentially sometimes creatine, which I don't even really take either. And to some people, I probably don't even look like I'm on breakfast for a start. Now, my background is actually in science. I have a chemistry degree, that is effectively my bread and butter. So when it comes to scientific literature, I can read them and extract them very, very well. So this is me looking at it from the outside, and honestly, I'm going to show you the actual studies we go through, so you're not just taking my word for it and it's just absolute nonsense. That's not what we're here for. So first, what even are they? GLP-1. It isn't some just magic lab invention. It is a hormone that your gut already makes every time you eat. The difference is, there's a catch, right? Your own version dies almost instantly to what we already know, okay? The difference is, it gets broken down within about 2 minutes. That's what this is here, but the difference is when we create these drugs, all it really did was take that same hormone that you're producing and engineer it to survive about a week instead. You're stretching it out into a new length of time, right? So it didn't give you a new feeling, it just created one that's already basically there and extended it out. That's basically what it's doing. They took one your body already has and it's just basically made it across 7 days. As simple as it can be. And just so nobody's lost, there is going to be a couple of terms in here that you will probably get lost with if I don't address them now. Semaglutide is Ozempic and Wegovy. They are both the same. Tirzepatide is Mounjaro and Zepbound. These are different in terms of what they are. It's the same family, but just different members. Now, here's where it gets good. Follow it through the body with me, because there is a 2025 review in the American Journal of Medicine, but that lays out the mechanism pretty much as clear as it can be, right? Literally as clear as it can be. It hits the 3 places that we obviously need to be hitting with these drugs. We start at the brain, it acts on the regions that go down and control the appetite. In the gut, it slows down how fast your stomach empties, so your food sits in there longer and you feel fuller sooner as well, right? That's basically what happens with these GLPs. And at the pancreas, it bumps the insulin and it lowers the glucagon. That is a tongue twister, which is a blood sugar and diabetes side, by the way. This is your pancreas down here, and that's your stomach, FYI. But here's the part that makes it all click together, which is fantastic. It's not killing your hunger to live. It's going to alter the cravings, the snacking, the constant background noise everybody gets, the hum of wanting food and not reaching for the biscuit tin. That's exactly what happens with all these people. People describe it as feeling normal around food for the first time in years. Now, that to me is fantastic. If you think about it in terms of turning like a dial down on volume setting, then that's basically what it does, turn down the food noise. The track's still playing, you've just stopped cranking it up to the absolute max, or even for certain people a little bit louder. And that's basically the whole thing that people are going to really, really benefit from. It turns down the want. You end up eating less because you genuinely just don't fancy it anymore. And to me, that is fantastic. And then basically the byproduct of that is basically you get weight loss, which is obviously where it comes into a calorie deficit that you didn't actually have to drag your balls through the glass for to get, which is obviously fantastic for a lot of people. So then comes the obvious question, right? If it turns down the want, why does the weight come back on for so many people? And to be honest, you probably already know the answer, right? Because we literally just built it, right? You never change the thing that is actually playing the music itself, like we always spoke to, right? Or spoke about rather. You just turn it down with an injection. That is completely different. So the day that you stop, the volume comes straight back up. You're not actually changing anything dramatic other than reducing it down. And this isn't me guessing, this is literally what happens. There's a trial called the Step 1 extension, published in Diabetes, Obesity and Metabolism back in 2022. That's when these drugs first started to become a bit more mainstream, shall we say. These have been going around for years, but this is when it started to come out more in the modern light. These followed people for a year after they came off the semaglutide, and honestly, that year after they stopped, they regained about 2/3 of all the weight they'd lost. That is incredible results, right? 2/3. If I was to say to you, you're going to gain at least 6% back, you'd be like, what the hell? And honestly, the drug's a tool, in my eyes. It's not a fix. What it really gives you is a window, a stretch of time where eating less is easy instead of a daily war for most people. And that is why we have an obesity epidemic. That is literally what's happening. The problem is most people treat the window like it's the actual final destination. They lose the weight and they don't build anything underneath it. They've got no habits that are going to be any beneficial. They've got no muscle and they've got no new normal. So when the window shuts down, there's nothing holding it up. They're back to the same habits they were before, while obviously having less weight. But when you have less weight on you and less body fat, and have been starving yourself for that long for X amount of time, your body's like a sponge. It's going to take it back much quicker than it did before. This also leads into the fact that when you move into it, right, it definitely does eat into your muscle, right? These drugs do eat into your muscle whether you like it or not, but it's not the drugs themselves that are the problem, right? If we sit in the nuance, which I usually do, it's the truth is a little bit more interesting than the panic, and it's quite simple. The scary number is that, yes, in some analysis, they have a big chunk of weight loss coming from lean mass, and experts at diabetes conferences always say this year, like, you know, blah, 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 blah. The new higher dosages that the drugs run, they can climb to 40% or more. And I'm not going to dismiss that at all, because if your lean mass is getting absolutely tanked to the point where actually you're losing muscle as well as losing body fat, it's why people end up getting the gauntlet look in the face. That is not fantastic. That is something that does need to be addressed, but it's also something that we need to be aware of for going forward as well if you are taking these regularly. 2026, there was a study in Cell Reports Medicine actually found when they dug in, these drugs mostly do strip the fat, which is great, fantastic. This is what everyone wants, right? But a lot of what gets counted as lean loss isn't even muscle, it's a loss of things like liver mass, visceral fat, and these are the things that are going to be playing into it as well, right? The loss of liver mass was bigger than the change in the muscle itself, right? So don't get these things confused. And while your absolute muscle and strength will probably dip, your muscle relative to your body weight and your relative strength probably is going to improve to some degree. So no, it's not always just torching the muscle in some sort of bonfire that people on TikTok, Instagram have just sold you. But losing the weight without lifting always costs you some to some degree, whether you're on the drug or off of it. And that is just the simple physics, because if you're not stimulating the muscle, it's not going to be kept, right? Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. The difference here is it's not really settled in science yet, right? It is early data, but it is definitely something that we need to be aware of, right? That is something that I'll always say. There is some early evidence that the reason muscle loss looks worse in the real world might not really be the drug at all, and that's pretty evident, I think, to be honest. The data presented this year suggested people actually moved less once they started. So they get fewer steps, they get less training. So if you think about that, naturally you're going to have, you know, the drive drops. You're going to train less, the muscle will start to go, literally just what I said. Now, that comes down to behavior. That is not chemistry, and the behavior is one part of this you can completely control. And this is one thing that I always say, there's always a preprint. So again, this isn't peer reviewed yet. Hinting that Mounjaro might cost a bit more lean mass than Ozempic, but the difference is it probably just because you lose more weight overall on it. So technically it's a better drug overall, right? If you have a greater result, your net gain of even losing muscle is probably going to be larger, right? Now, this is something that we can come back to in the future if it holds up, but I'm not going to present it as fact when right now it just isn't one yet. That's just the way it goes. If you're on one of these or thinking about it, do not do this before you actually go into all the information and what actually matters, and don't let it collapse on top of you either. If you're going to go on it, you need to lift for a start, because resistance training is how you tell your body to actually hold the muscle. There's no doubt about it. It's the same way in your deficit, whether you see bodybuilders, whatever, you need to have it. You need to have training in there. Eat your protein because you're seeing less food overall. So that quality has to go up, and keep moving on purpose, because the data literally points to you drifting into doing less without noticing. And that's where drugs like tirzepatide come in, because it actually causes you to move just as much, which is great. And the big one as well is treat it as a window. It's not a cure. These things will come to an end. Fat does come back a little bit easier, but the muscle doesn't, right? So you need to protect it while you've still got it. A lot of people are probably watching this one, where do I actually land in this and where's my stance on this? These drugs are genuinely brilliant for people that genuinely do need it and they were built for it. I think they're fantastic tech. If you have an obesity epidemic, which you do have, you've got real metabolic risks where the upside completely dwarfs the downside. Now, that is not something that I'm saying is happening, but it is very, very much a problem. I've got no problem with that at all. Where I get more cautious with is a person with half a stone to lose reaching for it to skip the work, because honestly, the mechanism doesn't really lie. The day that they stop, they've got nothing underneath that's going to really have changed. Like, you've not got the muscle like to have that kind of capacity. It's no judgment, it's just my own opinion. It's just the facts as well, I think, personally. And it does tie in everything about this channel is about. It's never going to be about the magic like of being sold drugs. It just turns down a signal that you can learn to turn down yourself through time and through experience. The drug doesn't stop your discipline. It doesn't stop or doesn't know your discipline. It does buy you the time though to actually get into shape. What you build at that time is the only thing that actually stays, and that comes down to putting in the work in and out the gym. Here's the exciting part, because this space is always moving fast, and that's the thing about technology and the fact about science. The next wave of these drugs isn't about losing fat better. We've already cracked that, it's pretty evident. I mean, you probably already know a lot of people that are on these, which is just the way it's going to go. It's about protecting your muscle while you do it, right? And to get why that's clever, you need to know about one little protein. Your body has a built-in limiter on your muscle called myostatin, within the muscles themselves. So think of it like a speed limiter on a road car, right? It's there on purpose. If you're capping how much muscle you carry so you don't just grow forever. Think of the myostatin cows, they will just keep growing, right? That's why. Normally, that's fine. But when you're losing weight that fast on one of these drugs, that intake is still clamped on. That is not a good sign, right? So your muscle has no room to defend itself while the fat strips away. There's a big difference in that, right? So what the scientists did is genuinely smart, and I think this is unbelievable, by the way, at the same time. They take the limiter off. It's quite simple, right? So there's a drug, and I'm not even going to pronounce it because I never actually know how to pronounce it. I think it's called apitegromab. I'll put it up here somewhere. It basically blocks the myostatin, and in a study just out in Nature Medicine, they gave it to people on tirzepatide alongside the weight loss drug, and those people held on to roughly twice as much muscle for the same amount of fat loss that we're already getting. Now that is an incredible amount of results, which is, to me, if you're looking at a percentage basis, that's fantastic, right? You're getting the same weight that's going, right, but you get half the muscle that's lost. It's fantastic. But there is another drug as well, and I believe it's called bimagrumab. I can't actually pronounce it as well. Does a similar job basically, right? Paired with semaglutide, it dropped the muscle portion of the weight loss down to around 7%. Though we are still waiting on the strength data to back that up. Now, the thing is, if you picture it like this, right? The fat loss drug turns down the volume on your appetite, okay? Pretty simplistic in that sense, like we explained back at the start. The muscle drug takes the limiter off so your muscle holds its ground. It's standing strong, right? One strips of fat, fantastic. The other guards the muscle, also fantastic. That's where this is heading. Stacked drugs that do both jobs at once. So we're moving into a new era of fitness, whether we like it or not, and it's going to be coming back into the mainstream, whether we like it or not as well. Now, I will always, always, always come back to studies in the future because it's just what I like to do. We're in an ever-growing space, right? I'll come back to it when there is more on this because I'd rather update you than pretend I just know exactly what's going on. I don't have it all figured out. I'm not explaining that I have it all figured out. It's never going to have it figured out at all. And to be honest, these are the actual studies. If you want to go and read them yourself, go and check my work. That is the whole point. I'm not telling you to believe me. That is just absolutely crazy. But what I will do is I'll give you evidence to go and do so. Hopefully this has been useful. Hopefully this makes more sense in terms of peptides and understanding what they are behind them and the science behind them as well and how they act on the body. And also, hopefully open your eyes a wee bit more to maybe not demonize them, but also as well understanding the risk. Because regardless of what you do or whether you take them or not, it's still going to happen in society. So we may as well be educated on it.